Hello, this is Arnel Tanyag. I'm doing a quick video on what are some areas that I work with business owners. So this is powered by Tanyag Company. That's my company. So I'm gonna give you a very specific statement. It's kind of a big, big, powerful statement, and I'm gonna break it down in a sense of the areas that I help people with. We unleash the true potential of family legacy by partnering with successors to instill unwavering confidence in scaling their real estate, construction, or trade business to monumental success in the low middle market. So basically, what it means is I work with companies between anywhere from 3 to 5 million and help them grow and scale their business through partnering with the successors. What I'm finding out, most businesses get to that 1 to 3 million range, and then they're doing extremely well, 1 to 5, and then they have their kids or key employees. And now it's for them to get to that next level. They have to take that business from 3 to 5, get it to 10, 15, 20, 25, and move into a sweet C-suite role so that they actually can grow and scale the business and create that ideal lifestyle, create that business that is, a success in the community. And I say I work with the low middle market because they have more resources, more money, more time, more people to some sense to scale. Very few businesses, less than probably 2 to 5% in any industry get to 1 million, and very few from 1 million get to 10, maybe another 1 to 3%. And then from 10 to 25 or on, it may be 1 to 2% at all in any industry. So what I'm doing today is I'm going to share with you the areas that I work with people. So one area is the transition of family dynamics. CEOs and founders and small business owners come to me when there's a transition of family dynamics. That's either becoming the founder, could be the mother or father, and they go, okay, look, I have some kids and I want to figure out, can they lead the business? And so what they do, and I find it out, is they get to a certain level, they're running the business, and like, I want to bring my kids in there. Okay, what does that mean? And they're not doing official succession planning. So I had a company, I worked with a real estate firm. I worked with the founder's been in, it's a second generation real estate firm, worked with him for a couple years, and they brought his kids in. Now the kids are basically running the business to some extent. And he was very thankful. And it was interesting. He brought me in because we were helping him with growing his business, and we found out it was best to bring his kids in. He was like, "Well, I'm gonna send my kids somewhere else, Arnell, and they can come." So once you have them come in, and then they've been working with him the last 3 years, and the business has done really well. It's a unique dynamics. It has done well. So I worked with that example of the founder, and he basically had some kids in there, and I was working with him. And then I've had some business owners where there's a successor. It could be uh, a brother, a sister, son, daughter, cousin, and they're the potential successor of the business. And now they're trying to figure out how to navigate that role because they've been told successors are working toward it, but the successor plan hasn't been formalized or has a stop. So now, how do I lead from that? And they're having some type of quasi leadership team meeting, but there's really no one leading. So what we do is we help them navigate that, because when you're doing a family-owned business, number one is family harmony. How do you keep their relationships positive while establishing new authority? That's not easy. I mean, I believe there's always got to be somebody who's driving leadership and then helping everyone lead, meaning that there's one leader, and the people who our owners are following, right? And how to work through each other's different goals and objectives and still get the outcome you want. And then the biggest challenge I find is the conflict resolution, how to talk to each other when there's high stakes. Every person has different personalities, different ways to communicate. Then how, as a leader, how do you communicate that? How do you address those tensions? So I have a company in New York. It's a family-owned business. I coach 3 out of the 4 owners, and we go through that all the time about how do you talk to your partner? How do you address conflict? How do you address it? How do you know the personality, stuff like that? And the last thing is the authority balances, is like, who's really in charge? You'd be surprised that a title doesn't mean anything. It's respect. And basically, people know who's the best person, and sometimes people don't know. So my role is to when somebody hires me, a successor hires me, and they want to be that leader, now let's go ahead and create the process. Like I'm working with somebody right now who's buying into a business, and he was like, okay, what do I do? I said, well, let's go ahead and create a formal plan and how you build and grow this business. I'll help you write it, how to present it, how to communicate it. And you're going to ask for buy-in. He's like, okay, great. Once you do that, now we got to achieve the goals. Once we achieve the goals, they'll leave you alone. And the person who has brought you in now can go into the role, which is basically be more mentor, consultant, and have a lifestyle while you're growing the business and still including them, in the results and the celebrations and stuff. He was like, wow. I said, what's the difference then? Because you made the transition professional. A lot of times in the transition of family dynamics, you have to bring a third party in to help you navigate through all of that family dynamics, because a third party you bring in makes it fair. It makes it fair in a sense that they're not family, but their role in helping you facilitate growth, they come from an outside perspective. An outside perspective typically is considered fair. Then when you have family members across the table, they're going to have, they may sabotage each other because they're thinking about this person that cares, this and that. When we have a third party, he or she is there to talk about the future, where we're at now, what we're going to do. Here's what we agree to get you to sign it. And they talk about, is anybody unhappy? Not that they're able to facilitate the outcome. And it may be a difficult process, but a third party has helped people. So that's one of the things, is transition the family dynamics to somebody now who is always leading to somebody who's going to lead, and how to navigate through that. The next thing is overcome the fear of failure. One of the things I do is I overcome the fear of failure. So small business owners and CEOs and founders bring me in because to continue building that family legacy and and there's a high possible failure. They're concerned, how do I do it? How do I grow my business? How do I grow it to 10, 15, 20 million? How do I do that? And in fear, if you're plagued by fear, you're paralyzing. You're paralyzed. You're avoiding, you're preventing to make necessary changes, especially in yourself, but not only in the business. You're afraid to propel it forward, or one of the biggest challenges is you avoid conflict. Or if you're sabotaged, you're just keeping really busy, not productive. Through our partnership, what we do is we look at where's that root of the fear, and we have a great resource called Positive Intelligence. I spent over probably about 12 to $15,000 over the last 2 years understanding positive intelligence, and how, if you take a step back and you do PQ reps, it allows you to gain space, which allows you to gain clarity, so you can evaluate and accept it and be at peace, or learn from it, or create an inspiration, or use the five sage powers to really get a good understanding on what decisions you need to make. But the powerful thing about fear, it's usually related to, you're already in that state of mind of being fearful. But if you can get calm and take a step back and have control of having that decision to step back and gain clarity, what's the best thing to do, have your values, have your priorities, and be calm in the decision, you'll overcome fear. And the key about this, I tell people, is it's, how they say it's good to learn through failure, but it's not good to learn if you're always afraid to fail. Because if you're afraid to fail, most time it's because the fact is, you understand failure allows you to learn. But the interesting thing, if you know that up front, you can overcome fear, not only because failure lets you learn, but the key is that when I see this in a lot of the clients I coach or advise, is the most successful thing is giving yourself space to fail. And there's something that I've learned in the last couple of years. You can fail and recover fast because you didn't know what you didn't know and you had no control. But a lot of the things that most business owners do have is the ability to decide what they can influence and control. But if they're fearing the fear of failure, they're just going to sabotage them so many times, they're never going to break through and they'll be unhappy. If they can give themselves space and they actually gain some clarity and look at it from what's really going on, because either we judge ourselves, people, or circumstances. Take a step back and look what's going on. Look at my purpose. Look at my values, my why. Look at my priorities, right? And give you space. You usually will make the right decision. And so, as through our partnership, we help them work through that, because we have to remember that it's okay to fail if you're learning, but it's not okay to be fearful and not move forward and see it as a learning experience. Because now what I see, we want you to be mentally fit, resilient, and to overcome fear, we got to keep moving forward. But understand, fear is a feeling. It feels bad, but it isn't, because you could always recover and move forward. The other thing that I do is address imposter syndrome. Small business owners and founders bring me in when they're experiencing the fear of being an imposter. And an imposter is interesting. If you're working in a family-owned business, a very successful business, and you're the successor, right? They're like, what, my dad, my mom built this very successful business. I have this pressure of taking it on. I have this self-doubt. How do I have the necessary skills and knowledge? You know, I'm not like my mom and dad. I'm like this. I don't know if I can achieve that. It's that comparison. I compare this and that, and then the confidence building. How do I develop authentic leadership presence, honors, but not only my tradition and the innovation, and that's the hardest thing is we feel you're an imposter, and really what it is you're not an imposter. If you know where you stand. So one of the things that we do, we have people take a MPA test, positive intelligence test. We look at, do they fit well in a role? If their mind works positively against them. We look at certain criteria, because we tell people those tests don't define you, they just tell you where you're at, so that everything that you feel like you're an imposter, you can learn. I mean, the amazing thing, I remember I was listening to Gary Keller talked in a podcast. He said that everything has been found in somebody else's process and system. Somebody who's very good at what they do figured out a process system, and then you can just learn from them. So anything that you can achieve can be learned through somebody else's experience. So one of the biggest things is people feel like I'm not worth, they're not valued, because they're comparing themselves. And I realize that we have to help you work through that, because if you are taking over a family owned business, you can be successful in your own right. What you have to really do is get around great people that's going to help you develop your own value, help you recognize, are you really good at business development? Are you really good at operations? You're really good at financial management, and then you can always bring other people whose skills, like I'm decent in financial management, but that's not my expertise. I will bring in people who are excellent in financial management. I have those resources. I have those contacts. They're excellent at it. So I will bring them in, right? Because my goal is I already know what I'm going to get. I'm going to bring the experts in. I work more as a team. I say I'm a team leader that brings these team people in there, and we work through it to help you get there, because I know my value. And the question is, do you know? If you know your value and you know your strengths and weaknesses, and you know what resource you have, as your sacred partner, I'm going to help you identify those on the front end, bring the right resources so you keep moving forward. So when you have imposter syndrome, I tell people, you're just not knowing your value. Let's figure out how to develop your value. Let's bring in some experts. Let's figure out what classes, what books you need to read. How do we get you to get out of your comfort zone? Because very few people grow up to be CEOs. People had to develop. Not saying there are not some that can. There's more people who have developed over time. The other thing was we call combating leadership isolation. Now, small business owners, CEOs, and founders bring you in when they're experiencing the fear of loneliness, feeling isolated, lacking support from someone who understands the unique challenges faced by the family owners and business. They don't have a sounding board. Again, they don't have a sounding board. I have clients who I am their sounding board. I see myself as a sacred partner. And as a sacred partner, I know themselves, my clients really well. I know their families. I know their business model the best way I can. but I'm a sounding board. So I have clients call me up. I had a client recently call me up because they had to fire somebody, and she was stressing out. I had a client who just sent me a text message and say, "Thanks for helping me get to a place where I can be on a Friday afternoon and watch my daughter play soccer." I mean, I have some clients that call me and say, "Hey, man, I need to talk to you. I'm stressing out over this." Or I have clients like, "You know me really well. What do you think?" So as a sounding board, what we do is we help them not make decisions in a vacuum. So when you don't have a sounding board, you have isolation. You're feeling alone in decision making. And here's the thing I always tell business owners: be careful who gives you advice. Everybody gives you advice on what they would do, but they don't know you, they don't know your business, they don't understand what's really going on. They're looking at the surface value. I've realized over the last couple of years, I tell people, "What do you think I should do, Arnel?" I said, "I don't really know." I said, "Well, I heard you're really good at telling people." "Yeah, but I have to know their personality, their what role in their business, if their mind works against them, their model, their goals, objectives." It's not that simple. And the other thing, when you are isolated, you don't build support networks. Who do you talk to, right? So you have to find people. Like I recommend my clients to be in some type of support network that they can talk to people. And then where do you get expert mentorship? I mean, the difference between a mentor is you're finding somebody in the industry who's done really well, but the difference with a mentor is they're not a coach, not an advisor. A mentor, you have to be able to have a series of questions and they answer it for you, and then you use that information from them because they've been in the business for a while and implement. But not a coach, not a trainer, advisor. They'll share you what they know, but it may not be where the information they give you is what you need. And then you also have to have the right questions. And then the other thing, when you are around, you know, and you're in a sounding board, especially because I'm a sounding board for a lot of my clients, it gives them clarity and purpose. Like, because we talk about the purpose, we talk about their why, what's the plan? Okay, what do you think? And then we go back and forth. Because eventually what we're able to do is able to navigate through the family dynamics and confidence that they make the right decisions. So a lot of the clients I work with who are in family-owned businesses is help them talk the stuff out in their head, help them figure out what's the plan, how to implement it, and keep the process moving. Because owning a business, especially family-owned business and being leadership, is lonely. You can't share it with your spouse. You can't share it with your family members who own the business because they may not truly understand. Some people are external processors. Some people are negative and they don't mean to. Other people ask a lot of questions, right? And then they just annoy the heck out of you. And then some people remember, well, you did this, you did that. And so you're asking questions. They may be triggered. Usually, in the combat leadership isolation, I'm a sounding board for them and I'm able to help them talk it out. Then we talk about a lot of the business stuff and personal stuff, and they're able to move forward. And, that's very valuable because at the end of the day, we need a sounding board of people who can support us, understand us, but also I call speak the truth in love, right? I call it being insultant. Tell them the truth, even if it means they would fire you, because at least you're the only one telling them that. So that's how we combat leadership isolation, by I becoming one member in the sounding board. I become one of the members in the inner circle. I become that sacred partner they can call and talk to. The next thing we do is we develop a clear vision and business strategy. Small business owners, CEOs, and founders bring me in when they struggle in developing a clear vision for the future. That's a one-page strategic plan. Identify growth opportunities, priorities, and strategies. They have to recruit talent, lead it, expand the business operations, and then, they have a lack of financial management. So do I do all those things? Not all of them. I probably about 50 to 60%. I bring in people. Like, I have someone who's very good in financial management. I have someone very good in operations. I mean, I can help them write a plan. One of the areas I'm really good is hiring off Indeed. I mean, I know how to hire off Indeed. I've been very successful last 3 or 4 years hiring off Indeed. I'm very good in the positive intelligence, helping people navigate through that, helping them put a plan and helping them stick to the annual, monthly, weekly goals and objectives. So when we're doing those things, we're looking at the vision, and vision is company and yours. your purpose, your why, the companies. Financial acumen is really having really good resources on your numbers, your books, your forecasting. Having that will determine you have great numbers, you can grow business fast and quick. Growth strategy, where do you grow? I mean, I bring in marketing consultants. I mean, I can tell you like, I don't that marketing don't look right and sound right. Let's bring somebody in. And I've done that. I've brought in people in marketing. I mean, what I'm really good is that I've done before and I still do is business development, face to face. That's one of the areas I'm very good at. I mean, I spent thousand dollars on referral marketing, event marketing, on how to develop referrals, relationships. I've done that before. Talent management is hard to hire off Indeed. One of the best hiring processes I think that I've ever met is what Maps Business Coaching has on high. They call it. They have the best process on hiring, and that I've seen on the hiring and developing, leading, training. It's probably the best. And performance-based hiring does a really good job on how to hire performance-based. So what I've done is I have identified the best process and systems of other organizations and just use it in my practice. And if I know my weakness, like financial management, I know enough to ask the right questions, but I bring in somebody in. And my people that I bring in are very strong technical wise, but they're also very strong financial wise. So I help them develop the clear vision strategy. Then I bring in the right people to help assist me. I don't claim to know all the answers. I claim to know where we get the right resources, the right people. And the other thing too is I always tell people that if I'm not the right resource, I will fire myself if I'm not needed, and we'll find you the right resource that will. So that's what we do is develop clear vision and business strategy. Developing leadership skills. Small business owners and founders bring me in when leadership skills are undeveloped. Taking a leadership role requires decision-making, team management, conflict resolution, and effective communication. One of the biggest things I see in most organizations right now is even if you don't have a title, you still be a leader. And leadership is really based on your self-leadership. You know, I'm a big fan of positive intelligence because you can only lead if you're positively intelligent, because you can take a step back and recognize what's needed and where your mind works with you versus against you. So to be the best, to really start leadership, you got to be able to start with yourself. So the most successful clients I work with understand that their personal effectiveness in themselves and growth. I mean, I find out if you're personally spending money, personally, professionally spending money and developing yourself as a person, as a leader, effective growth, and understanding, like if you have a goal this year, say you want to do 500,000 in revenue and you're leading business development, but you recognize you have certain weaknesses, what are you willing to invest? Who are you going to have you help you get there? The most successful people will spend the time and money to really improve themselves. And then once they're able to do that, then okay, let me go to team leadership. How do I inspire and manage teams, others, right? And there's the One Thing by Jay Pakisan and Gary Keller has a productivity system. That's the best way of leading and managing teams, solely based on, they have what they call a cycle of accountability. They have weekly scorecards. They have a 401 that's designed to help people focus on the 80-20, 20% equals 80 being productive. And then strategic leadership is how to drive that. I mean, I see a lot of people drive strategic leadership, but they're not even good at managing themselves well, and they're not investing in themselves, and they're sure not good at building a team, because you can't really build a team. You can talk about a big vision and goal, but if you're not able to lead yourself or be self-aware about what you have to do, it's going to be very hard to lead a team, and it's very hard to get the team to grow the business. So through our partnership, we develop that essential leadership skills and guiding you and your family business. Start with you first, how to work through resolving the conflicts, how to resolve and building the teams. And a lot of times I bring people in there, or at least I have a good understanding perspective how to help you do that. And it works, because at the end of the day, if you're going to grow a family-owned business, you got to know how to lead. Your parents may leave, your uncle and aunt may leave, The current founder may lead right now, and you have to figure out where you want to lead. And there are great books on leading, but at the end of the day, it's not reading a book, doing a book, and how do you see yourself? And so that's one of the things that I have to do is help that person develop in the leader they want to be. It's exciting to see them lead. The other thing small business owners and founders bring in when they're planning for the future, how does that look like? There's I believe that most businesses, even if they're successors, they should be building it to sell at any given time, because when they build it to sell, they build it at the best version of the business and the sales. So if the markets come right, timing comes right, you sell. But when you do that, when you think like that, you're actually positioning yourself to not be stuck in the business. So what we help people do is how to, have a succession, exit planning, address family issues, transition. Because usually what happens is, we always tell people like, okay, look at your current business, what does it look like if you're going to sell it in the next 3 to 5 years? Okay, how much is it worth now? Where do you want to take it? And we build it from that. And then we develop a strategy. How do we get there? We have, right now we have a couple clients who are in the defense contracting business or the government contracting. Like, I want to grow the business the next 3 to 5 years. I want to sell it. Okay, all right, let's get it evaluated. Let's see where we're at. And then what's the strategy? Let's find people who can help us figure that out. What's the strategy, what we need to do, and let's go for it. And then finding the right resources of people, experts, and who is going to help us with the plan, who we have to have, who's going to give us the knowledge or the leadership. Because planning for the future requires looking at where they want to be in 3 to 5 years. How do they see their life? How do they see the business? And then reverse engineer it every year. And then where are we at now? We have a plan, we have priorities, and we're going to focus that who's going to help you on the team. And one of the best resources I found is in the book, The One Thing, is that one-page business plan. It's amazing. I call it the one-page strategic plan. It's very simple. Then you break that in what they call a 401, annual goals, monthly and weekly goals. It's probably the best. And then you're just facilitating the team and holding them accountable to those top 20% objectives. So one of the things when people work, we're always planning for the future. We're always working. The only time doesn't work when the person doesn't want to plan. They're not willing to look ahead and work backwards. And that's the best way of building it. You build it for the future with a plan. And so that's where people bring me in, especially successors, because successors are excited and they want to do more. They have some ideas. Now let's figure out how we grow that business. And then it's interesting when I sit down with founders right now, people currently own businesses, they don't have a written plan. They have a plan in their head, don't have a plan in paper. And if they do, it's kind of like mashed up post-it notes, probably different page. But the problem with that is it's probably great for you, but it's great for nobody else who works with you to follow that. That's why, when we talk about planning for the future, we want one-page plan where somebody can help you and do that. And then if you have any questions or you want to contact me, Arnel Tanyag, arnel.t@tanyag.net. This is my personal cell, 757-754-6918, www.tanyag.net. That's on a LinkedIn profile. So if any of those 7 areas that I mentioned that you need help or have a question, don't hesitate to ask me. I mean, sometimes I give a lot of free advice because it's helpful, but then I also say, hey, that's something you're probably not going to be able to do yourself. Do you want to talk about me helping you? Because I tell people at the end of the day, it has to make sense logically, not just emotionally. The hardest thing about growing or scaling a business, someone really wants to have that decision made for them. They have to want it. They have to really understand. It is so hard to grow and scale a business because number one, you have to be a better version of yourself in the better version of yourself moving forward that then all the people around you, your coworkers, the other owners, your spouse, they're not going to see you at the better version. Sometimes they're going to be your worst critic. They're going to be the one that's going to hold you back. So you have to really want that, ideal lifestyle. You want the business to be, one of the most respected, and you're going to have to start off with you become the better version you personally develop, you personally do, and then fight how other people see you now. Because once I start seeing you success, you start taking trips or hitting milestones, winning awards because you have shut the noise and, just go at it, you'd be surprised. I mean, some of the most successful people I've coached, they have done coach, advisor, train. They've actually done extremely well because they're very purposeful. They don't care what other people say. They only care about the people who are close to them, that they're able to provide what they say they're going to provide, and they're going to keep improving, keep progressing, be the best version of themselves, lead the companies to where they want to be. So that's something like, if that's something you want to do, contact me, especially if you're in a family-owned business and you're a successor. Or are you in a family-owned business and you're not a family, but you're going to be the successor? Don't wait, because I know that in my experience, uh, when they're in that position where they have to figure out what they do, if the successes don't give them an alternative that I want to lead this, give me a shot, then eventually what happens, they don't do anything, and it becomes harder on the successor as much as the founder, or they'll sell it, and then you're out of an opportunity. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this helps you understand this is how I work with successors, family-owned businesses. These are the areas that I work on solving. These are challenges and problems I work through. So I hope it's helpful. Thank you.